Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the FIA Formula 1 World Championship Round 6, the Monaco Grand Prix 2019. Now obviously we started the weekend we're following a week of sadness as Niki Lauda passed away. Had pretty much 43 years extra, and unfortunately the accident finally sort of claimed his life really. Had a double lung transplant, but obviously he was suffering infections afterwards. His indestructible battle came to an end. So it had been a tough week for Mercedes, and obviously they wanted to go out this weekend at Monaco and make sure they got a win, uh, just to pay tribute to Niki. There was a massive tribute just before the race, a minute's silence with Niki's McLaren helmet, not Ferrari helmet, when he won his championship in 1984. Hamilton was very emotional during the weekend. The first time he actually did an interview during the weekend was actually after he got pole position, which is fair play to him because it was down to Lauda in the end why he went to Mercedes and obviously became the dominant force he is in Formula 1. And obviously he's not just a work colleague, he was a dear friend of his. And something that obviously was described during that weekend in Sky Sports' tribute is that Toto Wolff has been an absolute has been really a top team principal this week, because he was a dear friend. They did everything together, stayed in the same hotel. They literally were inseparable. So he wanted to make sure that the team did the right job that Niki would want them to do and win the Grand Prix. He was always there giving advice to Toto in the deepest, darkest situations, such as Rosberg hitting Hamilton in 2016 and the 2014 battle and everything like that. So I still think that Toto will be able to lead the team on after his death. He's learned a lot from Niki Lauda, but obviously it's going to leave a mess. It's not just the fact that you're losing a work colleague, it's you're losing a dear friend, and it's going to leave a massive hole, not just for Mercedes, but for the whole of Formula 1. Even if you didn't know Formula 1, you knew of Niki Lauda and his story. So, and obviously, so much so it was made into a film. So, yeah, and Hamilton obviously got pole position ahead of Bottas, and qualifying showed up like it did in Monaco that you take gambles, it sometimes doesn't pay off. And I'm talking about Ferrari Charles Leclerc. 6 minutes to go, he was called to the weighbridge, nearly missed the weighbridge and nearly got a penalty. Luckily, they didn't do anything to the car, so he was pushed back. But he did. People saying he didn't have enough time to get round. Vettel had enough time to get round, and he was nearly knocked out with a minute and 40 left, and literally raced around the circuit to put a lap in. So Charles Leclerc in 12 took the gamble, relying on the data. And that's probably where Mercedes have been better than Ferrari. Ferrari relied a little bit more on data and what the data is telling them, rather than Mercedes having probably Niki Lauda there with common sense. And the common sense is stuff what the Delta says, just go out and put a lap in, right? Because if you're out there trying to put a lap in, you can change the situation. Whereas if you're not out there, you can only sit there and watch. You can't change what's going to happen. So I felt bad for him because I did think that was a team error. I don't think that was a massive error on Charles Leclerc's part. Obviously there's again team, like I said, the team relying on data and Delta time. Maybe he should have stepped in and said common sense, get me out there. But obviously it meant in the race he had to do boom or bust. And he said he was gonna, if he had to crash, he had to crash, but he was gonna take risks. Now, obviously, it got off to a good clean start. It was going well, and Charles Leclerc put off a couple of brilliant moves one into Loeb's hairpin, I think on Lando Norris, then on Romain Grosjean into the Rascasse. Then he tried, I think it was literally a lap later, he tried it against Hulkenberg, but this time he was too far back to try and make the move, and was just, I think, realising, maybe the team told him he was already pit stop behind the leaders, and probably in desperation trying to get back on terms, he just throw it down the inside and obviously caught a puncher tyre, and being like the Gilles Villeneuve-esque sort of drive it back, if you ruin the car, fuck it. So, and he raced it back instead of doing it slowly, which probably he would have done if he had a few more years experience on him. And it wrecked the tyre, delaminated the tyre, wrecked the floor, and that was his race done. He had no downforce, and in Monaco you need downforce. So yeah, so after that he had to retire. Excuse me a minute, I just need a drink. Yes, and that obviously forced the safety car because of all the damage and all the debris. Obviously, everyone took the advantage. It was at about lap 11. Took the advantage of making the pit stop. Now, obviously, being the lead Mercedes, you don't know what the other teams are going to do behind you. So Hamilton took the advantage and pitted for a set of mediums, while everyone else went on hards, realising that Mercedes have got Hamilton on mediums. They immediately changed it to hards. Now, in that melee, Bottas was about to get out ahead. He got ahead of Vettel, who was held station. He was then released, but Red Bull decided not to hold station and just released Verstappen straight into Bottas. Now, I looked at it time and time again. If you look at it again closely and look how close, because it's a narrow pit lane, it's not like these pit lanes of Bahrain where you can have two lanes effectively and not a lot of people can get hurt. Monaco, you haven't got the space. It's so narrow to the point you can barely turn your car out the garage. And to stop running into the Renault mechanics or the McLaren mechanics or any other mechanics down the pit lane, he had to push Bottas into the wall, causing obviously damage to fly off. And that damage that could fly off, yes, it looks like a bit of carbon fibre, but it can't do any harm. But if it's flying off even at 40 odd kilometers an hour, you won't want a bit of carbon fibre hitting you. And that could hit anyone, the press in there, the mechanics in there, anyone. And the fact that he's caused so much danger in releasing straight into the path of Bottas, yes, it might not have been his fault, it would probably have been the team's fault for not releasing him, and they should have been aware of what was going on behind them. But forcing a driver into the wall, flying bits off the car in the middle of a pit lane that's so bloody narrow, because you've released into a path of a car where you would have run into the mechanics if you didn't force him into the wall, it causes so much danger. And the fact you only get a 5-second time penalty for something that dangerous is criminal. It is absolutely criminal. I'm sorry, the FIA, it's been 25 years since they reformed the GPDA after what happened in San Marino, when this not just Roland Ratzenberger was killed, Barrichello had his nose broken, Senna was killed, a mechanic was taken out, or someone was taken out by a flying wheel in the pit lane. 25 years on, if you're going to give a 5-second time penalty to someone who's had to force a car into a wall to avoid hitting mechanics who are coming out to serve their own cars, well, what's the fucking point? You might as well just let them do it all the time. That was a drive-through, at least. not being biased, right? Because Max Verstappen put on a very good show and made it fucking heart-wrenching to me, to be honest, as a Hamilton fan. But that 5-second penalty was nowhere near enough punishable for that offence. So the FIA need to look up the and be a bit more strict on that, and then really punish teams, because it happens time and time again, even in pit lanes such as Monaco. And if you're gonna do that in pit lanes such as Monaco, Australia's a really small one as well, right? What's the point? You might as well just let someone get killed, because that's what's going to happen. Then obviously Hamilton realises on the wrong tyres, back onto the race this is, and everyone else is on hards behind him. People saying that Bottas had to stop again afterwards because of a puncture. It wasn't a puncture actually. They realised they put him on the wrong tyres, and because they had an extra pit stop, he might as well pit again. So he pitted for hards. It meant Hamilton had to go 67 laps on a brand new set of mediums that could only do 50 laps, and by 20-30 laps they were already gone. They were already on the way out. Hamilton describing after the race, he never had such gone tyres since China in 2007, when McLaren left him out far too long and effectively cost him the championship. But how he kept Verstappen behind because of the Mercedes power, being able to generate it out of Portier and somehow keep Verstappen behind him. Yes, he was moaning a lot. I would have been moaning a lot. So you got me on these tyres at Monaco. The car won't turn in. At some point, I'm going to hit a wall here. But in the end, it probably needed someone from Mercedes to go, look, Hamilton, you lost the race because you decided to pit for a new set of tyres that you thought were gone and cost yourself track position, which cost you the race in 2015. You cannot pit. If you pit, you're going to finish 5th or 6th. You've lost the race. End of story. You cannot pit. So he had to do basically what Senna did to Mansell in 92. Don't forget, Mansell back then had the faster car by about 2 seconds per lap with the active suspension, which McLaren didn't have. They had new tyres on that car because of a puncture with Mansell. Otherwise, he would have just gone on to win the race. So it meant he was about 3, 4, 5 seconds faster per lap than Senna. But Senna, being the master of Monaco, just put his car in the centre of the road, and that's all you have to do at Monaco. You put your car in the centre of the road, the car behind will not get past no matter what happens. You literally would have to have a problem with the car. And even if there's a problem with the car, if the MGUK went, he still wouldn't have got past Hamilton. Ricciardo last year, he had an MGUK failure, it was 5 seconds a lap slower, and yet he still kept Vettel behind. And it's the same here. Hamilton managed to get 50 lap required tyres to 67 laps to win the Grand Prix. And people are voting for Verstappen as driver of the day. Yet he nearly caused injury in the pit lane. Yet he decides to have a last gasp dart down the inside. I all get having a go, but that was never on. You've got more chance of me flying to the moon than having that chance on. And then he comes on and starts blaming Hamilton. Well, I'm sorry, Verstappen. At some point, the driver ahead of you has got to turn in. He's left it as late as possible, knowing you're coming. But as soon as it happens, he's going to turn in. It's Hamilton. He is not just going to waltz aside and let you through, especially at Monaco. And at some point, he's got to turn in. He gave you room. You just darted down the inside like an extra set. And then you've got the audacity to fucking blame Hamilton. Whereas Hamilton just went, it's a racing incident. Because it's a racing incident. Right? Verstappen, you're a brilliant talent, but at times, you've got to accept when you've got it wrong. And in that moment, you got it wrong. You were never on for that. You were never on for that move. End of story. Right? If you had a go and said, yeah, I tried and I didn't get past, right, but I had to have a go, accepted it. But the fact you came on the radio and started having a go at Hamilton, right, for turning in, well, I'm sorry, he's got to turn left at some point. He's got to make the corner, otherwise he cuts the chicane, and that's a penalty because he gains an advantage. He goes past track limits. So, yeah, and the fact that people are voting Verstappen driver of the day when Hamilton's done 67 laps on tyres that can only do 50 laps and get Verstappen behind him, though Verstappen was the faster car. Who's voting? These people are voting. I don't care if they call themselves Formula One fans. They clearly aren't. You clearly aren't, because you can't see what a good performance is and what one performance is better than another. Right? Charles Leclerc getting third place. Well, I'm sorry, mate, but Charles Leclerc retired. Right? Driver of the day should really be an option voting if you're still in the race with 4 laps to go when they actually start the vote. Right? There's no point voting Leclerc driver of the day as third place if he ain't at the end of the race feeling on the podium, is it? People say I'm biased towards Hamilton. Maybe I am a bit. So what? But I'm sorry. If Hamilton, right, made the mistakes, I would have put Verstappen as the driver of the day for forcing him into those mistakes. But it was actually Verstappen in the end that was making the mistakes, not Hamilton. So Hamilton deserved driver of the day, without a doubt. And that sort of performance was something that I think Niki Lauda would have been proud of. Niki Lauda would have been proud of that performance by Hamilton. Absolute formidable drive. And that is why he's the 5 times world champion, and he is the current world champion, and looks like to be going on to win a 6th world title. Unless we move on to Canada and Ferrari for somehow find the advantage that they've been looking for. They've got the power advantage. So going into Canada, which I think is next week, they should be faster. If they do not get this one right, then they might as well start looking at 2nd place and consolidating that. Because they're 117 points now away from Mercedes in the Constructors' title. After the domination of pre-season testing, they are now 117 points, which is disgraceful. But we move on to Canada. Let me know what you think, because I'm now dragging this video on. Let me know what you think. Leave it in the comments below. Leave a like. Subscribe to my channel. Tonight I've got a video coming out about my story with an interview with my mum, who explained the first 2 transplants, liver transplants that I've had, because they happened obviously when I was a baby. Keep a lookout for that video. Yeah, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll speak to you guys soon.